I loved what you said about, people say, well, we were a Christian nation. Well, we've never been a Christian nation in the sense of what those words actually mean. We've been influenced greatly by biblical information. And in the Declaration of Independence, we actually talk about God 5 times. And in the Constitution, we have the moral principles of biblical Christianity there, even from people that weren't Christians. Right. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Judeo-Christian ethic is in our DNA. I mean, it's written into our Constitution. It's written into our Declaration of Independence. In fact, you go to Washington today, you can still see these words of Scripture that are sandblasted into the great monument. The depiction of Moses is in the Supreme Court. You see this all throughout. We have "In God We Trust" on our money.
Yeah, talk about the Jefferson Memorial.
Yeah, absolutely. Jefferson Memorial has inscriptions of Scripture and sayings, of godly sayings all throughout it. And yet people overlook these things today because we become more of a secular nation. And so again, not just with the church attendance, but even those within church today. Talk about secularization in the church. George Barna did a study not long ago. He determined that only 18% of professing Christians read their Bibles every day, or every week rather. 14% read their Bibles every day. And John, during the COVID pandemic, he did another study. He found that 14% dropped to 9%. So we know that non-Christians are not reading the Bible. Christians apparently are not even reading the Bible as well. So that's a little bit of the spiritual state that we're in. So we've drifted far from the original foundations upon which our country was founded.
When you hear that, Mark, what does it say when here you're a pastor, you're an adjunct professor at a theological seminary, you're a PhD, you were an attorney that worked in the criminal division of the court for 13 years, so you got your law degree. Okay, when you put all that together, what you've seen in the past, what you've seen in court, now you are the pastor of 2,700 people in your church every Sunday. What comes to your mind as you hear Jeff talking?
Well, we often hear people say, when's God going to judge America for what's happening? But I think the Bible would actually say, the passage Jeff just quoted, that God is already judging America. There's different kinds of God's wrath. We talked in the last program about God's wrath in the book of Revelation. That's kind of God's direct wrath that He pours out, like at Sodom and Gomorrah, like with the flood. But there's also God's wrath in the end times that we talked about on our last program. There's eternal wrath. But there's also what's called the abandonment wrath of God, where God abandons people and turns them over to their own sin. And if you read Romans 1 and what's happening in our country, it's not saying when those things happen, God will judge you. It's saying when you see those things happening, it's a sign that God already is judging you. So we're already seeing the fruit here of God's judgment in our own nation today. So it's not a matter of will God judge us. Now, this abandonment wrath of God, where He kind of takes His hands off, is often followed then by His direct wrath. So how far we are from the direct wrath of God, I don't know. But we're certainly in that abandonment stage, and we see it. It's just increasing exponentially. It's mushrooming in our country today as we see lawlessness in the streets. We see the things that are happening in our schools today. We see the sexual ethics in our country that basically are non-existent. The transgenderism, all of these things, and it's all a satanic attack against the very core of humanity.
Yeah.
We don't even know what a man or a woman is anymore, and it's Satan's attack on the very core of the crown of God's creation, which are humans who are made in the image of God.